Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of ShellBlack Whiteboard, where we explain a topic about Salesforce and provide some tips and tricks on the way to make sure you're getting the most out of the Salesforce platform. So I'm ShellBlack, president and founder of ShellBlack.com and Salesforce MVP. And the topic for this episode is validation rules. And validation rules are important because they help you enforce data quality inside Salesforce to make sure you're not getting a bunch of trash in the system. So enforcing data quality, so what do I mean by that? So we're looking at missing data, making sure someone can't save a record if there's something that's missing. Conflicting data, so maybe you have two date fields and one should be less than the other date. You don't want to save the record with a conflict in there. And making sure that you have consistent data standards and formats. And probably the most popular example of that is the state field on addresses. So if you want to make sure users are putting in a two-digit state, Texas, TX, rather than having someone spell out Texas, TEXAS, and saving the record, you want to put a validation rule in place to make sure they can't save a record unless it conforms to the standards that you have in place. So when do validation rules run? So anytime you create and save a record or edit and save a record. So basically it runs on save. So if you have a bunch of rules in place, you save the record, it's going to look to see what you have in place and see if it needs to alert anybody. And when it does send an alert, what it's going to do is you have a choice. You can put a message at the top of the page saying, hey, we have a problem here, or you can put the message to display on the field that's got the problem. You can have multiple rules per object. So let's say we're on the leads record, and you want to make sure something's in place on the lead status field, and maybe you want to make sure that lead source is filled out. You can have 3 or 4 or 5, however many validation rules that you need in place, all running at the same time, so you're not limited to just one. You can also put validation rules pretty much in any place in Salesforce, so that includes standard objects as well as your custom objects. So standard objects would be things like leads, accounts, contacts, opportunity cases, and so forth. Something that kind of catches people out with validation rules is the syntax of how you write them, and I've got a lot of examples coming up on how you write validation rules. You actually have to write them in a formula syntax. So if you're not good at writing custom formula fields in Salesforce, don't get too alarmed. If you go into Salesforce and search help, there's actually some tip sheets that have lots of different examples of how to write these formulas. And we're going to go now to the other side of the board, and we're going to step through quite a few examples to make sure you're just kind of comfortable of how these are actually composed and written. So with that, I know this is a little bit of an eye chart, it's a little bit small. Don't worry, I'll transcribe these formulas and I'll put them in the notes, the show notes for this episode at the bottom, so you don't have to take notes from what we show on the screen. Just copy the formula fields that I have on the transcription of this post. So let's look at a couple of validation rules to look at or try to identify that there's missing data on a record. So let me step through this formula. If you're not comfortable with formulas, I think once we get through these set of exercises, it'll start to click. So what we have right now is a status field, which is a pick list. So basically this formula is saying if the pick list status is in the value of not qualified, and the why not qualified field, which is, let's say it's a freeform text field, is blank, then throw an error. So what it's trying to say is if you have the status of not qualified, you need to put something else in this field called why not qualified before you can save the record. Users get in a hurry, they forget to do things, so this is going to stop them and throw them an error. Here's kind of an interesting one, and this is one on lead conversion. So the use case in this is we don't want the user to convert the record without filling in the lead source. So how this formula translates is if the lead source, and we're converting that to text, if that's blank and it's converted, which is a formula called isConverted, so and meaning both these conditions are true, this condition and this condition, throw an error. So if we convert the lead and the lead source is blank, we're going to throw an error and stop the user and make them fill that out. Let's take another example. I like the conversion thing, so we've got another lead conversion example here. So what we're trying to do here is, and this is kind of a cool trick, we want to enforce creating an opportunity on lead conversion. So basically it says if the converted opportunity ID equals blank and the lead is converted, so here's our and statement, so this must be true and this must be true. If both of those are true, throw an error. And this is kind of cool because the error displays on the conversion page, not on the lead page, but on the conversion page. So we want to make sure that we're enforcing the creation of the opportunity record on conversion. So start noticing that for these to fire, or for the alert to happen, or for it to block the save of the record, it has to be true. So that's something to keep in mind. So conflicting data, real easy use case in conflicting data. If the close date is less than this other date field, and this date field I've just labeled demo performed, so the thought is we need to do the demo before we close the sale. So if the close date is less than or earlier than the demo performed, stop the user, because we probably need to go back and update some of this information. So we have conflicting data. We want to stop the save of the record. Okay, I've got two examples here of format. So I went and originally talked about missing data, conflicting data, or enforcing data quality in formats, or making sure your data is standardized. So there's a couple ways to do this, and there's a really good formula out there for making sure that you have a 2-digit state field. It's a very long formula. It's in help. I didn't want to put it here, but I gave you two other examples of making sure that people are entering data consistently. So the use case on this is someone had a stock ticker. So CRM, I think, is Salesforce's stock ticker. So the use case is we want to make sure that people put the stock ticker in all caps, and it had to be either a 3-digit ticker, or a 3-character ticker, or a 4-character ticker. So there's an interesting little formula in Salesforce called regex, R-E-G-E-X, that will look and compare the syntax based on how you define it to make sure you're saving it right. So basically, short answer of how this is done. So here's our ticker field. So the ticker can either be 0 length or blank, or the ticker must be a capital A through Z in 3 characters, or the ticker could be capital A through Z in 4 characters. And if that's not true, so we put a not statement to make the inverse of that. If that's not true, it's going to block the save of the record. Let's take another quick syntax format example. Social Security number comes up a lot. You can do this with phone numbers as well. So the length of the Social Security custom field could be 0 or blank, or it needs to be in the following syntax. So 0 to 9, 3 characters, 0 to 9, numeric, 2 characters, dash, 0 to 9, 4 characters, which is the syntax of a Social Security number. So if that is true, you can save the record, but we put a not statement in front of it, so if it's not true, it's going to stop the save. So 2 examples, stock ticker and Social Security, on how you can enforce data quality, make sure people are putting that in there. And then I threw one other example in here that comes up every once in a while, but I thought it was kind of a neat example of how you could use a validation rule. And so the use case is you want to have either this field, field 1, populated, or field 2 populated, but not both. So you can't have both blank. You can't have both populated. It's either the first field or the second field. So what this expression is saying is either the first field 1 is blank or field 2 is blank. And if that is true, or if both those fields are blank, we're going to block the save. But if both fields are populated, we put a not statement in front of our is blank. So basically, field 1 is populated, field 2 is populated. If that's the case, we're also going to stop the save. So that's an interesting use case. Neither field can be blank and neither field can be populated. We want either or. So that kind of wraps up this one. So again, validation rules is all about data quality. And if you have good data quality, you're going to get good reports. You're going to have better performance through your workflow rules and assignment rules and some other things. Users get in a hurry. They don't stop and remember things. You can't train all your users. So use validation rules to kind of enforce data quality and be that kind of nanny babysitter to make sure that your data is tight and looking good. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have feedback for us, you can contact us in a couple of ways. You can email me at whiteboard@ShellBlack.com. I'm also out on Twitter, Shell_Black on Twitter. We would love to hear your feedback, and we'll talk to you soon.